The conflict view of the mass media believes that media ownership is a problem and that the media is used to control and oppress people. It's a source of conflict in society. Marxists believe that the mass media further the interests of the ruling class or bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie controls the proletariat. That's everyone else. Feminists believe the mass media furthers the interests of the dominant sex, which is men. It's a weapon of patriarchy used against women by men. Marxists believe the media gives a false, distorted view of the world. They term this ruling class ideology. Ideology: false ideas, half-truths and distortions. They keep the powerful in power and keep the rest of us in the dark. In the film The Matrix, the character Morpheus says to the character Neo, "You were born in a prison, but a prison you could not smell, taste or touch. A prison for your mind." Karl Marx said that the ruling ideas are the ideas of the ruling class. Ideological themes in the mass media. Firstly, anyone can make it. You see this in The X Factor, The Apprentice, films like The Dodgeball, Big Brother, and many, many other films and television shows. It's not possible for everybody to make it. 2. Portrayal of the lifestyles of the rich and powerful as normal, as in Cribs, 10 Years Younger, Grand Designs and Extreme Makeover. 3. Obsession with property and ownership. For example, on Channel 4, there are programmes called Selling Houses, Location, 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 Restoration Man, Relocation, Relocation, Escape to the Country, A Place in the Sun, Property Ladder, and many, many more. 4. Anxiety about youth, beauty and appearance. You can see this in programmes such as, well, to be honest, I'm not going to read them all out to you, but it becomes extremely disturbing where you hear young people talking about their bodies and parts of their bodies in terms of assets. For example, breasts. When did breasts stop being an organ to feed babies with and started being a money-making asset? Very disturbing. 5. Portrayal of aggression, lying and competitiveness as normal, as in The Apprentice. The focus on elites and their lives. For example, in The Hills, working class characters are simplistic or negative, e.g. Homer Simpson and Peter from Family Guy. Ralph Miliband, who's father of Ed and David Miliband. The media is the new opium of the people. By this, Miliband means it creates illusions and a sense of well-being, like a hallucinogenic drug. Opium, of course, is what you make heroin out of. Miliband sees the media as a tool of the bourgeoisie. He is therefore an instrumentalist. Choice is an illusion. In reality, there's a limited range of ideas and views. Evidence for Ralph. The main news programmes, such as News at 10 and the 10 o'clock news, are on at the same time. This may be deliberate so that they clash. Serious documentaries are dumped on in the graveyard slot on Monday evenings when not many people are watching. For example, Panorama and Dispatches, both on at 8 o'clock. Miliband sees the media as a tool, an instrument. However, this is also a weakness. It assumes a high degree of control and an evil capitalist puppet master. Hegemonic Marxism. This removes the idea of the ruling class as an interferer or controlling directly. Herbert Marcuse sees it as a dominant form of culture, which is called a hegemon, that suffocates and excludes everything else. It's a tyranny of the bland. It kills other viewpoints through lack of airtime. Back to the Matrix. For Gramsci, the proletariat are in a cage that they can't see or touch. They know that they are anxious, unhappy, and tired, but they lack the vocabulary to describe and explain their suffering. They only have the language of the hegemon. Buy more, work more, you are what you own. Why? Arguments for the conflict view of the mass media. Argument 1. Although owners don't have day-to-day control, they hire and fire the journalists and producers who work for them. They set editorial policies. 2. Some get very involved. Rupert Murdoch, for example, was decisive in the elections of 1992 and 1997 with his pro-conservative and then later pro-Labour policies through his newspapers The Sun, The Times, Sunday Times and The News of the World. 3. Pluralists assume that we have choice for having many outlets, but it may be the case that although there are many outlets, there's one dominant hegemonic viewpoint. For example, on multi-channel TV, you've got many channels, but only the same audience. To make the sums work, they have to go and fill it up with cheap, usually American imports. 4. Barriers to competition. To set up a new national newspaper would cost tens of millions of pounds. To set up a new satellite or cable network would cost hundreds of millions of pounds. Only very wealthy people can enter the market, if at all possible. 5. Advertisers, i.e. capitalists, have much more power than any individual consumer. Therefore, they're able to alter what's on TV. For example, you'll notice that we have lots of beauty products advertising when there are shows on about these things. They're highly unlikely to advertise during a programme which is critical of their industry advertising. Of course, you do have examples of shows such as Gok One, which are ambivalent about buying beauty products. However, merely the discussion about beauty may increase anxiety in women, and that's why it makes sense for advertisers to advertise beauty products at the same time. 4. Consumers may not want good entertainment and news. They probably want easy, passive and comforting infotainment. However, as we know, people often like things that are bad for them. For example, I like cheeseburgers. Doesn't mean that we should always get what we want. If the hypodermic and hegemonic viewpoints are accurate, pluralists are in trouble and conflict thinkers are probably right. Ofcom and the libel laws. These seem to work for powerful people much more than the average person. It's very uncommon for an average person to take a newspaper or TV channel to court. It's very common for a powerful person to do so. Equally, powerful people in the UK often use libel laws to silence journalists. Lawyers read through every controversial story and often they veto it before it even comes to the press, even though it may be true. The government have the power to censor. These are called D-notices, Defence of the Realm notices. In the recent wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, critical journalists were denied access and or protection. Embedded journalists, that's journalists who follow the troops around, only got one viewpoint, that of the US and UK governments. Lastly, the culture of journalists. Journalists tend to be middle class, middle-aged and white, very much like the bourgeois capitalists who employ them. Criticisms of the conflict view of the mass media. Firstly, it assumes all, most or much of the audience is passive and easily seduced. I'm going to leave that up to you to decide whether that's a problem or not. 2. Instrumentalists. Puppet master view, Murdoch aside, seems quite unrealistic. They're actually too greedy to care. If they can sell Marxist programs, they will. If they can sell pro-capitalist programs, they will. It's about the money, is the counter-argument. Lastly, there are alternative views in the mass media. Marxist feminists would suggest perhaps there aren't enough. How much is enough? Do they want their own Marxist channel? You decide.